Hello and welcome to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly, Director of Advanced Media Production at Cal State Long Beach. Today we're going to be talking about a new concept in education known as flipped learning in the classroom. And to help us sort out what this all means is my guest, Dr. Dawn Haviland. Dr. Haviland is an associate professor in the Educational Leadership Department. Welcome, Dawn, and thanks for joining us on Talking Points.
Thank you.
All right, well, let's talk about flipped learning. And first of all, we need to define what that actually means. What is flipped learning in the classroom?
It's a great question. So flipped learning, another name for it is inverted learning. And they really think about turning the classroom on its head. And maybe the best way to define it is to give an example. So in a class that I used to teach, for instance, I might lecture for 40 or 50 minutes. So students would come into class having done the readings. Then they would come to the class and I would lecture, and there'd be a little Q&A, a little discussion. But after that, students would walk out of that classroom and maybe do an assignment where I'd test their learning. In the flipped learning classroom, my lecture becomes a video that's maybe 7 or 8 minutes long that they look at before class in addition to their reading. And then when they're in class, they're actively engaged in problem solving and sort of critical analysis, and I'm able to talk to them about what they're learning kind of in real time as opposed to sending them off to do an assignment later on. And
what has been the practical experience for you in terms of administering a flipped classroom environment?
It has changed the way I think about teaching, actually. So it's fairly easy. If you're going to do a lecture, you prepare your PowerPoint and you prepare your talking notes and you go in and you give your lecture and students ask questions and you answer. And there's a lot of thought that goes into it, but it's fairly straightforward. In flipped learning, I had to take that 40-minute lecture, let's say, and push it down into a 7 or 8 minute lecture. And so it really made me think about what's really important that I need, what do I need the students to know before they come into this class so that we can do whatever it was we're going to do in the classroom. And then sort of the backside of that is then when we're in the classroom, I had to think really carefully about what kind of activities were we going to do. So I had to write a case study, I had to ask the right questions to sort of move them along so that so hopefully I could help them learn, but also that I could see what they were learning and kind of coach them along the way.
Which brings up my next question, and you're on the same pathway where I'm going, which is how do you plan for this kind of environment? What kinds of things do you need to think about to be able to prepare for this?
I think for me, it was a combination of things. So first, I had to think about what I really wanted them to get out of that class. So I needed to think in a way that was really more defined than the way that I used to teach. What do I want them to know coming into class, and then what do I want them to get coming out of that classroom? And then I had to think about what those activities were going to be, but I also then had to become more comfortable letting that process unfold. The nice part about flipped learning is that as opposed to me at the front of the room lecturing for 40 minutes or so, the students all of a sudden become the center of that learning experience in the classroom. So it flips who's in the center of the classroom in a way. And that means that as an instructor, you have to be okay letting them take the class where they're going to take it and kind of going with them. It becomes much more of a coaching relationship.
What kinds of tools do you need to be able to operate in this kind of environment? There could be technology tools involved or other kinds of tools. What do you need?
I think you're right. I think technology is a big one. I'm not sure that the idea of a flipped classroom is necessarily all that new, but what I think is new about it is that the technology makes it so easy for us to do it. And so I was able to do this with my own desktop computer that had a video camera built in. The university provides some lecture capture software that makes it really easy to basically talk through a brief lecture and capture all that and feed it directly onto the website. And I think as long as you've got that technology and that sort of infrastructure in place, a lot of the other stuff that happens is what has been happening in good teaching for years and years and years in terms of whether it's worksheets or assignments or group work activities and case studies, things that faculty have been using for years.
And the benefits of the flipped learning or inverted classroom environment, as you've mentioned, is that it allows you to spend more time engaging with the students in real-time conversations.
I think so, and I think it's much more invigorating for me as an instructor because there's a lot more dialogue. So as the instructor, I can see what the students are getting and what they're not getting, and I can sort of tailor my instruction on the fly. I can watch students learn from one another, which I think is really fun, and that doesn't happen in the traditional lecture dynamic. So students are actually engaged in learning from one another and coaching each other as they're working on these sort of critical problems in class. Yeah, and there's just a higher level of engagement. You hear the noise in the classroom go up as the conversation happens. It's great.
There may still be a few skeptics here watching our program who would say, well, that's all fine and dandy, but what if the students don't prepare? What if they don't do the homework in advance?
Yep. Well, I think these aren't necessarily things that I had to fall back on, but you might, I did use worksheets, and you might collect the worksheets and make sure that students were doing the worksheets when the worksheets were done when they came to class, I should say. You might give a quiz before class. So nowadays it's fairly easy in any kind of learning management system to give a quiz and have the students take it online, and you'll know even before you walk into the class what they know and what they don't know and how you might want to tailor your instruction. I think that in our classroom, students really held each other accountable too. So when you put students in groups, you know, if we come to a group and you see that I'm not doing my work week after week, you might be inclined to maybe take me aside and say, you know, you maybe want to pull your weight. Think about pulling your weight here. And I think some of that happens as well.
So some of the leverage came from the peer pressure, if you will, the positive peer pressure to make sure that everyone stays together.
Yeah, I think so.
The assignments. But the main power of leverage for a professor might be the age-old pop quiz.
Yeah, you could do a pop quiz, you could do a quiz before class. You could call on people in class and have them answer questions where you're really kind of putting sort of the Socratic method, I guess, and putting people on the spot. So I think there are a variety of tools that you can use, and they talk about to sort of ensure that students are coming having done the work you expect them to do.
What about for the professor and the teacher or professor who has to prepare for a flipped learning environment? Those that have been teaching for 20 years or 30 years have a prepared lecture that they've been doing for a long time.
Yeah.
What happens to that model of teaching?
That's a great question. That was actually one of the things that surprised me when I started my planning. I liked the idea of the flipped classroom, and I thought, well, I'll just do this and let's see how it goes. And as I got into it, I thought, wow, so there's a lot of stuff that you really need to think through, and I can't use that 40-minute lecture anymore. But that 40-minute lecture didn't necessarily go to waste. I was able to prune it down. So I think, as I said earlier, I think it forces you to really think about what's the most important information that you need and you want the students to have before they come into class. And the rest of that lecture became either elements of the case studies that I gave students, or questions that I asked during class, or key ideas that I wanted them to have when they walked out of class, but I didn't necessarily think they needed to know before they came in. So it's not that all that preparation is not all for naught, but it does force you to change the way you think about what you've done.
So the professor is going to have to update the materials, perhaps summarize the materials a little more effectively in order to do this?
Yeah, I think so. I think you really have to give some thought to what's the most critical information that the students need to know, and how can I present it as compactly as possible, and then use other tools of engagement to help them learn the rest.
Could the flipped learning environment be used also for a very large classroom, for a large lecture class?
I think so. I think that there are elements of flipped learning that were in practice even before what we know of in terms of what we now today call flipped learning in large lecture classes. A professor at Harvard, for instance, would teach lectures to 200 or 300 people and use collaborative peer-to-peer learning as part of his lecture. And I think you can do that in a lecture of almost any size, as long as you plan accordingly and you're comfortable as an instructor. So I think it might look a little different than it did in my 25-person classroom, but I think that you can absolutely do flipped learning in a large lecture hall if you want.
What was the biggest realization for you as you developed and then adopted this flipped learning model?
I think there were two. I think the first one was really sort of personal, and I alluded to it earlier, was it doesn't necessarily reduce your preparation time. It's not any easier, because you've got to make this video and then you've got to think through very carefully, what am I going to do in class, in a way that if you've been teaching the same lecture for a few years, you don't have to do. So it's a little extra work on the front end, but well worth it, because the second benefit that I saw was how much I enjoyed just learning to trust the students and letting them run with it. And so the payoff was absolutely there. I mean, I had a much more enjoyable time in classes as a result.
Right. And you teach graduate students.
I do.
Master of Science.
Yes.
And even doctoral students.
Yes. Yeah.
And I might just add for our viewers that at Cal State Long Beach, it's possible to earn a doctoral degree in the College of Education. Maybe we should talk about that for just a moment. How does that work?
So our doctoral program is right now taking applications for its 8th cohort. So we've been in operation for about eight years. It's a 3-year program. Our students come to us with already having earned a master's degree. They come to us from a variety of fields, from education to sociology to math and engineering even, and they come to learn to be educational leaders, to take that next step on their journey. So if somebody wants to move on to be a school principal, in the K-12 world, or an assistant superintendent, or if somebody wants to be a dean or a director or a vice president at a college or a community college, that's what our program prepares them to do.
Right, and the designation is EDD, which is the educational equivalent of the PhD in most other disciplines.
It is. The EDD is what we call a practical or applied doctorate. So a PhD is very researchy or more theoretical. An EDD is going to prepare somebody with a lot of doctoral level skills to be a leader or a manager in an organization.
Right. Okay, but I wanted to quote something from your bio about how you approach the process of teaching. And you stated that your goal for students at both the master's and doctoral levels is to be, quote unquote, critical consumers of ideas. And that is so that they can weave together ideas that meet the distinct needs of their students and the institution. What did you mean by that?
Well, part of that is the reason that flipped learning is so appealing to me. I think that as we're in both the master's and the doctoral program, we're preparing people to go run organizations, institutions that make a difference for students, and that's primarily what we do. And that involves solving complex, new, and novel problems. And so I think as a leader in either type of program, you need to be able to think outside the box a little bit, to borrow that cliche. You need to take solutions from a variety of areas that you might have learned in class and put them together into one solution. It's clinical in a way. I want you to be able to diagnose, almost like a doctor would diagnose, and say, here's the problem, and we need these treatments to fix this problem. And so I want people to think sort of critically and creatively about that. And that's part of the appeal of flipped learning, is that it takes the learning to a deeper level. The flipped classroom takes the learning to a deeper level, I should say, and really get students to apply what it is they're learning, to practice those problem-solving skills, to practice those diagnosis skills, to integrate ideas together. And that's what I'm shooting for in the classroom.
And I think that it's important that we talk to some of your students.
Great.
And so we're about to take a break now, but when we come back, we'll bring in a couple of students, master's students, in one of your classes where the flipped learning environment was utilized.
Fantastic.
We're going to take a break now, but join us for the second segment where we will bring on the students and we'll put Don to the test to see how they analyze his efforts. Stay with us.
Training is about more than muscle. It's about inner strength. So I push myself. That's why I serve in the United States Coast Guard. I train with the best, a team that shares my drive and commitment. We collect intelligence, guard our shores against drug smugglers, and keep our waterways safe, because our nation expects more.
If you expect more, maybe you were born ready. Find out at gocoastguard.com.
They said I would die.
My doctor told me I had ALS.
They said I wouldn't live to see my kids grow up.
But their doctors were wrong. Multifocal motor neuropathy, referred to as MMN, is a rare disorder that progressively weakens muscles in the extremities and is often mistaken for other serious neuropathies, as well as the ultimately fatal condition known as ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. But unlike those disorders, MMN affects only lower motor nerves and has no sensory involvement. Symptoms tend to be asymmetric and characterized by weakness, cramping, twitching, or muscle atrophy, usually beginning in the hands. Disease progression depends on the length of time the patient remains without the correct MMN diagnosis. With early diagnosis and treatment, most MMN patients continue doing the things they enjoy.
Cooking.
Gardening.
Spending time with my family.
For more information, please visit these websites.
Welcome back to Talking Points. I'm Dave Kelly, and my guest today is Don Haviland. He's the Associate Professor of Educational Leadership here at Cal State Long Beach, and we have two of his students who have joined us. I'm going to introduce them now. On the far left is Rocio Zamundio. Rocio is one of 5 children and is the first of her family to attend graduate school. She's a second-year graduate student here in the College of Education, the Masters of Science in Counseling program. She is also a transfer center specialist at Santa Ana College, and she received her bachelor's degree from Cal State Fullerton in sociology, I believe.
That's correct.
Right. And next to her is Markeshia Babers. Markeshia is also a second-year student in the Master of Science Counseling program in the College of Education. She is also currently an academic advisor at the College of Business Administration's Advising Center, and she received her bachelor's degree from CSU Northridge in journalism and public relations.
Yes.
Right. Thank you both for joining us. And Dawn, back to you. You had these students in your class, and you taught them in a flipped learning environment. Describe exactly what you were doing in that environment and what the physical layout of the class was like.
So the class itself is a management of higher education class, and so the goal is to give students the basic tools they need to understand organizations, understand budgets, strategic planning, and help things work for the benefit of the students that they're serving. So in our classroom, one of the things we do is we spend a lot of time studying organizational theory, sort of how do organizations work and how can we help them work better. And so in this case, what we would do with the flipped learning classroom is each week, for the first probably third of the semester certainly, I would push out to the students via a website about a 7 or 8 minute lecture, sometimes a 10-minute lecture. They'd come to class having done the assigned readings and viewed the lecture, and then they would work on a problem that I created. So they'd work in small groups on a problem and try to understand that problem and propose solutions to that problem using whatever it is they had read for that week. And one of the nice things about the classroom we're in, it's called an active learning classroom. Cal State Long Beach is building more and more of these, is rather than your traditional chair classroom where there's a chair and a tablet arm and everybody sits in a neat row. This room had 6 different tables. Each table sat 8 people, and each table emanated out from the wall. So the instructor was in the center of the room. I kind of called it classroom in the round. Students were in these tables where they could work with each other, and the tables and the walls were whiteboard. So as the students were working on these problems together, they'd take out whiteboard markers and they were writing on the tables or they were writing on the walls and kind of brainstorming solutions, trying to understand the problem. They were practicing the skills that we hope they use as they go ahead and run organizations now and in the future.
And when you say classroom in the round, you had a pretty cool command center that you were sitting at, from what I understand.
Yes, it was fantastic. So there was a table and sort of a very small computer monitor that drove everything in the classroom. So I could push out PowerPoint slides to each table. There was a video monitor to each table. There was a document camera, so I could show them an actual document. I could actually write on the screen as well to sort of highlight things on a PowerPoint slide and have that pop up. It was really, it's what we think about when we talk about the classroom of the future. I think we were able to use it. It was a lot of fun.
Great. And how would you describe the experiences that they had? Give some adjectives to those experiences.
Oh, that's a good question. I think engaging was, I hope, that was certainly one of my goals. It was engaging and they engaged the material in a different way. I hope challenging as well. And I also hope realistic. So it gave them a sense of what actually organizations are like and the kind of problems they might be dealing with. So those are things I hope they got.
Okay, well, as I promised, we're going to grade Don on his classroom environment. He already gave these students their grades, so they're covered, they're clear. So no pressure now, but Markeshia, what was your experience like in the classroom and how did Don do?
It was really unique, very unique in that the information that we would read, we would come to class and be able to discuss it with our group members, our classmates, and actually write out different ideas, different solutions, and have Dr. Haviland walk around and kind of look at what we're coming up with and ask us questions to make sure we're thinking about the right things for the cases or the problems that we were looking at. So it was a very exciting, a little challenging at times because you had to come prepared to class, you had to make sure you read the material, and then it really pushes you to participate. Whereas in a traditional class, you're sitting there listening to a professor. This classroom, you are an active participant and a learner in the classroom, and you have to contribute to the discussion and drawing on the board and on the wall. So it was a really unique and exciting and challenging experience for me.
Okay, and Rocio, what was your experience like?
I had a very positive experience because this type of learning is exactly what I need as a learner. I was able to, I'm a visual learner particularly, so being able to see a lecture beforehand to supplement the reading from that week's class made me feel even more comfortable when I was coming into the classroom. So I was definitely more prepared to work in the classroom, leaving more time to actually learn what it would be like to have to make these type of decisions in the workforce. So I definitely really had a positive time. It was very engaging. I loved the idea of being able to draw on the table that you're sitting at so that everyone can see and you could take pictures, and really it was a really positive environment for me to learn in, and definitely the right thing for me as a student in the education field.
Had you ever had an experience like this before in the classroom, and if not, how was this different from previous experiences?
I was lucky enough to have this experience, a similar experience in the summer prior, because I took a counseling class and it was structured the same way, but it was a group counseling class, so I would definitely say it was definitely still different. In Dr. Haviland's class, we worked in groups a lot more, and it was more challenging in the sense that we had actual cases. And so even though we were in the classroom, the physical classroom space, and we had quizzes prior to and in my group counseling class, this was definitely a different experience, more engaging again, where we could actually draw on the walls and not only have your group involved, but have the entire classroom know what ideas you were trying to bounce around. And so it was definitely, I would say it was beneficial for the entire class. I feel like we made very good use of our time, and we were very efficient, and I love efficiency.
And Markeshia, how about your experience in the same vein? Had you ever had a class like this before?
This was actually my first time being in a flipped learning classroom, so it was really a new experience for me altogether. And kind of, I felt a little bad. I'm writing on the wall. So it was a unique and exciting experience. Like Rocio said, we made a really good use of the time. Whereas when you come to the classroom, you're sitting and listening to a lecture, and this time, with this classroom, you're sitting there and you're actually talking about what you read or the lecture that you've already watched online. So it's really good use of the time where you're discussing everything that you've already read and making sure you actually understood what the professor is trying to communicate to you. So I enjoyed it.
Well, Dawn, so far it sounds like you're earning an A for your efforts.
Oh, goodness, right? That's nice.
So if you had to do it differently, would you change anything, Dawn? What have you learned from the experience?
I think that as I feed it into other classes, I'll probably start the planning a little bit earlier. That's one of the things I'll do. I think that in this class, I found I was going right up to when I wanted the video done to have it posted. Then it was a little closer than I would have liked, and so I think I'll start the planning a little earlier. And I think there might be times where maybe one of the questions you asked earlier about how do you make sure the students are ready, I can imagine there'll be a class or a scenario where I might want to give a quiz in advance or at that time or whatever. With this group, this was an exceptional group of students, and I never felt that pressure, but I could imagine that would happen.
Well, when we talk about faculty development and the growth of the faculty members, they also gain from these experiences as well. It's not just a one-way street. You're learning back in the process, too.
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I learned a lot about myself as an instructor. I sort of pushed some of my own limits as an instructor, and I learned a ton from the students. And just in the questions they asked and the conversations that we were able to have, because flipped learning allowed us to open up that classroom space to do that. So it was a great semester.
So I take it there were some questions that you hadn't anticipated that emerged as a result of this process?
I think so. I think whenever students are struggling with ideas, I think any student or any class has that, where they ask a question that hopefully you've never heard before, or you hadn't thought about it that way, or you hadn't looked at it that way. I think what was great about this is that was the chance, that was the whole class. Each night for 3 hours, that was the experience. It was a dialogue in a way that doesn't traditionally happen in a classroom. And so you get a lot more of that, and there's a lot more of an exchange of ideas, and you walk out hopefully a little bit smarter yourself.
And Markeshia, in your future endeavors in education, in counseling, and so forth, how will you use this experience to inform your efforts?
Hopefully I will be able to use one of these classrooms one day as a professor. I think it gives, students the opportunity to be a participant in their learning and their understanding, and not just being receiving the information, but actually contributing to everyone's education. So I think that this is something that I would want to utilize in my classroom one day, or in my counseling or advising as well.
And Rocio, same question for you.
I also hope to teach in the future, particularly in the community college. So in teaching counseling classes, which is what I hope to do, I would also want to use the same structure. I think it really empowers the students to trust themselves that they are capable of not just receiving the information, but also sharing the same information, new information even, with their professor and their colleagues in the classroom. So I think it's very empowering, and so that's why one of the reasons why I really like this structure.
Well, let me ask another question, and that is, we've talked about empowering the students and having the professors more engaged in the interactive process. What are some unexpected results of this process? Are there any that you can think of? Anything that you didn't expect did happen? Rocio?
I would say just the feeling, and I don't know if this is a typical graduate student answer, but wanting to make sure that you covered all of the information. If you don't have a lecture, when you don't have a lecture in class and you're not taking notes, I don't think you can grasp, okay, did I make sure I wrote everything down? But when you have a lecture beforehand that's much shorter and maybe a PowerPoint that has a few bullet points, I think sometimes I felt like, okay, did I cover everything? Do I have all of the information that I might need in the future in the workplace? And so I think supplemental heading points or talking points I think would help just to have as a supplemental tool.
Right, and Dawn, I think you wrote in your bio that one of your interests in terms of research is faculty development and the socialization process.
Yes.
What is that all about?
Well, so I'm interested in how faculty learn to be faculty, and it starts when we go through graduate school and as we move into the field. And I think as it applies to flipped learning, it really starts as a faculty member. How do I learn to use technology? Can I think of myself not as that idea of the sage on the stage, but the coach who works with the students? Am I comfortable? How am I socialized in a way that allows me to think of myself as more of a learner with the students and a facilitator of that learning than the grand lecturer who delivers wisdom? And so that's how these two things sort of connect for me.
And believe it or not, that's the last parting shot.
All right.
We've already run out of time. It just flew by. But I want to thank all of you for being here today. Dawn, great job with this classroom. Markeshia and Rocio, good luck in your future efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining us on this edition of Talking Points. Be sure to join us again soon for another show. Until then, I'm Dave Kelly. Have a nice day.